Morning, even afternoon, we got a banger for y'all today, baby. What we got for you here is a reaction video, and this is me reacting to MOISTCR1TIKAL talking about the state of Overwatch 2. Obviously, I'm sure everyone here that is watching this knows who Moist is, but just in case, I'll have his YouTube in the description below. Obviously, I have my own opinions about it, but I kind of wanted to see someone like Moist, who also played Overwatch and was pretty heavily into the community, what his opinion was. If you do enjoy this, be sure to leave a like, hit the sub button. Most importantly, be sure to tell somebody you love them. All right, I'll catch you in the next one. We got a pretty big reaction video for y'all here. So I'm sure every single one of you knows MOISTCR1TIKAL. If you don't, I will have his YouTube in the description, but this is Moist and he's talking about Overwatch, and on top of that, Overwatch 2. This is about the whole PvE mode getting canceled. Obviously, y'all know I love Overwatch. I played it forever, so I'm gonna give my opinion also. And on top of that, I wanna hear what Moist has to say because, you know, Moist also played Overwatch for quite some time. So let's see, I just wanna react to this.
Have you ever watched a video and you just know in the back of your head that someone out there is watching it at the same time you are, and you can kind of feel their pain and tears, kind of like in Pacific Rim where you're sharing the neural load. Both of you are experiencing this disaster unfold in front of you, and you can kind of have this almost empath moment where you know there's someone crying behind the screen watching this too. Well, welcome to the everyday experience of being an Overwatch 2 fan. Every time there is a new announcement from the Overwatch development team, it's just bad news. It's getting visited by Krampus every few months when they make some kind of new details about what's going on with Overwatch. It's always just awful, disastrous news. And today's was by far their worst. They just completely announced that the last 4 years of hard work on their PvE component to Overwatch is just being scrapped. The entire progression system, all of that, just being flushed right down the to join the gators in the sewers now, which is beyond shocking, because that's the entire purpose of Overwatch 2 exists.
That was literally, so I was gonna pause and just, so I'll pause periodically and just kind of say, like, you know, chime in, but what Moist is saying is so accurate. I'll say this at the front of this video, I haven't even seen the rest of this, but I think what really hurt Overwatch, I dare say, I mean, his title is It's Canceled or It's Dead or whatever. I think what really hurt it was going to Overwatch 2. They just kept working on Overwatch 1, man. They think they had it, and it's sad to see. It really is, but...
This thing, by the way, you might recall Overwatch 2 launched and there wasn't any of the story mode PvE components to it. They said that was coming in the future, and that's the entire reason why it's named Overwatch 2.
Right.
Because right now the game is basically just Overwatch 1, but they had that big balance update. It was basically a big patch where they went from 6 to 5 for team comp. And of course, changes to heroes and their kits, pretty significant changes in some cases.
All that could have been done in Overwatch.
But at the end of the day, it was just Overwatch again.
Right.
The whole point of it having a 2 in its name and being marketed as a sequel is that there was this promise, this little pinky promise that the PvE and story mode, the hero mode, all that, it was coming. It was, you know, trademarked right around the corner. It's on its way. But unfortunately, just like the Season 2 Ultimate Muscle DVD I ordered from Amazon back in 2004, it's never showing up. Which begs the philosophical question that would have Socrates scratching at his noggin. What the fuck is Overwatch 2 then?
It's Overwatch 1 with updates.
Why is Overwatch 2?
It's Overwatch.
If the whole thing that was supposed to be the identity of this title, the PvE story mode, is no longer in it, then what makes Overwatch 2? We're getting real deep into the weeds here. We're about to start experiencing some fucking solipsism. But anyway, let me show you a...
I will say, Moist, man, bro, he's like mad smart, you know? Like, I think Moist has used about 4 or 5 words right now that I don't even know, like, I don't know what that last one he said is, but I'm sure, I agree, whatever it is.
Segment from the announcement where they broke this hard-to-swallow pill to the community. It's fucking tragic.
And so we're left with another difficult choice. Do we continue to pour all that effort into PvE,
my camera
hoping that we can land it at some point in the future? Or do we stick with this set of values that we've aligned on and focus on the live game and focus on serving all of you? With everything we've learned about what it takes to operate this game at the level that you deserve, it's clear that we can't deliver on that original vision for PvE that was shown in 2019.
Wow.
What that means is that we won't be delivering that dedicated hero mode with talent trees, that long-term power progression. Those things just aren't in our plans anymore. And we know that this is going to be disappointing to many of you, which is why we wanted to bring it up before we talked about the roadmap. And to be perfectly honest, it's been really difficult for many of us and a lot of folks on the team who've poured their heart and soul into that stuff.
This clip will live in infamy in the Overwatch community for quite some time, I imagine. This is going to be the boogeyman that haunts them for a long time. They shut down the copium of the PvEs right around the corner, guys, then everything's going to be great. The grass will be greener once the PvE and story mode's finally out. Just hang tight, buckle down, it's on its way.
It's like
they just ripped the band.
And it's just like now, I'm sure Moist is going to say it's just like now, what is even the point of the entirety of Overwatch 2? From the outside in, right, as just someone that loves Overwatch, I mean, it just looks like they just wanted more. I mean, it looks like a money thing, right? That's what it looks like. Ultimately, right now, Overwatch 2 is Overwatch, but it's like if they just kept updating it and taking care of it versus Overwatch completely being neglected, just flatlined, if you will, because they're working on Overwatch 2. I want you guys to understand something. Everything I'm saying is from someone that is a massive Overwatch fan. I have thousands of hours in that game, and I loved it. It sucks because I feel like they had something, and I just, for me, it's like, is it? I mean, like I said, Moist said it's canceled. It's like, is this too late? You know?
And they'd often say, nope, no reason to believe in magic. We're pulling all of the resources from it and focusing on the live game. Now, beyond the obvious of why this is horrible, it's important to note that Overwatch itself, Overwatch 2 itself, isn't the most cared for product right now. I wouldn't say it's neglected. There's a lot of members of the community that do complain about it being neglected from the team, but I disagree. It receives a balancing update, a patch at least once a month. So the frequency isn't terrible.
I don't think it's neglected now. I'll say that.
Well, but it doesn't have the same tender love and care you would expect from
when
a
it
title
had that,
like this.
when it
And
flatlined
it's
in
certainly
Overwatch
been in a
1.
long-term drought when it comes to meaningful new content being added to it, like new heroes, maps, or things like that. That shit's all but extinct. That's not something that's been really frequent in the Overwatch ecosystem for a long time. And that's because they have been focusing so heavily on trying to deliver that PvE story mode talent tree experience. And now all of it's fucking worthless. It's all for nothing. All of the years they spent doing that instead of focusing on making Overwatch the multiplayer better,
right,
has just been nothing to show for it. It's all been in vain.
Yep.
So it's just a real cherry on top of the shit cake. And understandably, a lot of people are disappointed here. There were a lot of people that probably got Overwatch 2 because they just wanted the PvE and story mode, and the multiplayer was just a little bonus for them. And now that's not even coming, so what the fuck did they even bother with the title for? I've never quite seen something to this scale executed this poorly, where they market something that's, hey, PvE story mode, this is what makes Overwatch 2 a real sequel, not just a balance update we're doing to Overwatch, it's this real shiny new toy that you're all gonna love to play with. It's this PvE story mode. They've shown footage of it, they've made a lot of announcements about it,
they've
they've really
trees too and
pushed
stuff,
the idea that this is going to be worthy of being called a sequel to Overwatch because the PvE and story mode's doing so much heavy lifting and so much is going into it. It's real deep, it's real fun. Now, GameSpot did conduct an interview where they asked questions to try and get a little more clarity for the community. The big talking point is the direction that you're now taking with PvE, that you basically aren't doing it. Is that the correct way to characterize it? It's not happening anymore and you pivoted away from it. And Aaron Keller responds, I think I would characterize it slightly differently, which is we are doing a part of what the team had set out to do, but not the entirety of what was discussed back at BlizzCon 2019. So the real focus is on the story missions and that experience as opposed to the more open-ended hero mode and that stuff. Right, so it's fair to say that the experience that you showed during the first Overwatch 2 reveal is not going to be the one that will be released at any point. Yeah, exactly. So we're definitely not doing the hero mode and the talents and that power progression system. So you're basically doing absolutely fucking nothing.
Yes. I will be curious. That talent system to me was one of the coolest things because I love like World of Warcraft. So I will be really curious but they bring talent system to multiplayer. I don't even know what that would look like though, because then it's like, not only do you got to balance the heroes, but you got to balance the talents.
Thing of what was advertised over the course of the last 4 years.
It's like, what's the point of it?
It's the most watered down, bare bones version of a PvE component that they could tack on, at least from everything I'm seeing here. It looks like they're going to try and do like these small little story missions for some heroes where there is PvE to it, but it doesn't have the progression system, it doesn't have a talent tree. So it really just feels like you're almost just doing a custom game that Blizzard themselves is giving a stamp of approval to. Like, you're just playing some fanfic that Blizzard's given the thumbs up for. This just isn't at all what anyone was expecting for Overwatch 2. This isn't what anyone was buying into for the hype of Overwatch 2. A story mission that they put out once every 6 months, maybe, that tells the story of Widowmaker, the time she ate a sandwich at a Starbucks and then had to fight 5 droids on the way out. Like, that's not interesting, and that's not worthy of this being called a sequel anymore. There was no reason for Overwatch 1 to have died. This next part's really interesting and a bit odd. There's a lot of honesty from Aaron here, so he mentioned something that I briefly touched on about how the actual PvP game felt neglected by most of the community. He says, "We had a really large portion of our team working on the PvE side of the game.
Thank God he reads all this, bro, because I can't read very well.
That because we eventually stopped making content for it. It's been maybe 2.5 years since the last hero that we launched, and we don't want to be back at that point where it's another 3.5 years since launching a PvP map." So he admits that they recognized the game quality was suffering in the PvP side of things because of all of the focus on PvE. He then goes on to say that they shifted strategy last year, and after shifting strategy, they focused entirely on the live game and pumped out Overwatch 2. Which I think is a little stinky because Overwatch 2 did not feel like this crazy big shift in priorities from the team. This felt like something that one of their departments could have been working on while they were still working on PvE. Again, Overwatch 2 as it launched was just a big patch for Overwatch. And really, like, when you break it down to its bare bones here, if you really take its pants off,
Right.
it was only a couple big changes. The biggest, of course, being
5.
Reducing teams from 6 to 5.
Correct.
But that's not exactly something that takes a ton of resources to change, I don't
Right.
think. Of course, I'm not
That could have been something that was in Overwatch that didn't need a whole new game.
fucking developer. I could be very naive on how hard it is to take one number away from 6. Subtracting may be very difficult in the code of the game, but that was by far the biggest thing about Overwatch 2. Hats off to GameSpot.
I mean, they had so many people excited for PvE, right? And that was kind of, and Moist obviously talked about that. That was the main focus. Because at this point, now Overwatch 2 is just what Overwatch was with one less player and just more updates, which should have been done the entire time. That's kind of the point. And I'm sure, like, I'm not going to speak for Moist, but it's like they didn't need Overwatch 2 with where we're at now. Like, you could have left it at Overwatch, kept updating it, and not updated it for a little while, and, you know, just whatever.
But for not being afraid
whatever.
to actually ask some decent questions here. So this next section, he's basically saying exactly what I did. So he's talking about how there's going to be a lot of frustration because they're basically giving a game, or they're not giving the game that they had advertised. You know, he says, we're in a situation now where this game is what it's always been. It's
Right.
evolved in some ways, but a sequel was released, and that sequel's justification hinged on the PvE.
Yep.
Why did that happen? And without just reading verbatim the response here, you can absolutely go read the entire GameSpot article if you want more insight. I'm just going to try and sum it up the best I can.
Sure.
His response is basically saying, like, yes, the PvE won't be as we said it would, but we feel the game is very different from Overwatch 1 for a variety of reasons, and they keep patting themselves on the back for their roadmap, saying that this is the biggest thing they've ever done. Like, this kind of update for Season 6 is the largest in Overwatch history, and their roadmap illustrates their goal, like their mission, to make this feel like a real sequel that's different from Overwatch 1. But it's really not that impressive. Like, they're not doing anything here that other games aren't doing more of and better. Like, this roadmap is fine, I guess, but not as like justification for calling this a sequel when you've stripped away what was supposed to be the main component.
Something they could have done in Overwatch.
Okay. These aren't like incredible
Overwatch 2.
jaw-dropping updates, like innovations to the game or the formula. Adding a new map or 2 new maps isn't exactly going to have people charging into the streets, pumping their fists, celebrating, oorah, twirling their shirt over their head or anything. And adding 1 new hero like once a fucking year isn't that impressive either. But like I mentioned, the game doesn't have this kind of tender love and care, so I guess drip feeding any kind of content and attention to it is good. It's a step in the right direction, but it's coming on the back of stripping away the main component of the sequel, like the whole identity of it being a sequel. So it's just, I don't know, it doesn't seem to me like this justifies it being called Overwatch 2 anymore. And one other thing I find a bit laughable, even delusional, or maybe I am the one that's on stupid pills, but they really seem to put a lot of stock in the quality of their limited time events, or like their event modes. Like, they really seem to put a lot of faith in how much players are going to love their events.
Right.
And they're
I played
fine.
that Halloween
like,
one.
I've played their events before. I've played a lot of Overwatch. The events are fine, but it's not like what would keep me coming back to the game just because you have like a goofy, silly event mode going on at the time. But they seem to really think that that's a huge accomplishment, that they have basically a fucking custom game that...
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt Moist, but I like they have, that is something you can play one time and be done, right? And it's like you can unlock the stuff and then you're done. There's a leaderboard, but I mean, me personally, I don't care about that leaderboard. That's me. I don't know if Moist talks about that in a second here. He's almost done, obviously, but those events, if that is like something they hinge on, that's just, oh man.
They'll pump up in a playlist every now and then. To me, it just feels very underwhelming and falls flat because, again, you have this sequel that was supposed to have a huge story mode PvE to it that's not there anymore, and now scrambling to try and justify why it's even still called Overwatch 2. But yeah, anyway, just wanted to talk about this a little bit because it's extremely disappointing to see this. I was looking forward to trying it out. I didn't really know what to expect going into it, but I was optimistic that it would at least be high quality and fun, and now it's just never coming out, at least not in the way that it was supposed to. Now it's just going to be watered down PvE stuff into Overwatch, so that's not very hype. But yeah, anyway, that's really about it. See ya.
It is just, you know, Moist, he, like I said, he's someone that played Overwatch as well. So I wanted to really see what Moist had to say about it. And I mean, him and I think we're both on the same page. Sucks to see, man. It really just sucks. It's the easiest way I can explain it.